Welcome into the Autzen Audibles podcast. I'm at Prehm and Erik Skopil on the show as always. And today we are recording the mailbag. And so thank you for submitting your questions. We had to actually turn away some questions and save them for maybe next week because we've got so many and so many that were really good questions for us to dive into. If you're listening to us on the podcast form, thank you. Make sure to give us a review. We really appreciate that. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. We're trying it out, and the results are coming in, and they're pretty darn positive in terms of what we're getting from a reaction standpoint on YouTube. So it looks like this is something that we're going to be expanding on and doing more of in the future. Okay, Erik, let's dive into this because I'll be honest, we've got a football press conference that we got to be at in about an hour, and we've got 7 questions we got to jump through. So no more of the getting everyone ready for the show.
Yeah, let's jump right into it because you're right. We are a little time pressed. First one from @CK_Quack. I assume nothing of consequence will happen at the spring game, but barring injury, God forbid, what would be the most significant thing that could happen?
The game getting canceled because of COVID.
Oh gosh, Matt. Yeah, that would be the worst, and I hope that doesn't happen. That would really suck so much because there hasn't been any. We haven't had any sort of negative. We've heard nothing about COVID impacting spring at all.
Right.
So if we get turned away on Saturday, that would be the worst case. No question about it. Is we don't get a spring game at all. So let's cross that off the list. I'm not even thinking negative consequences here. I'm thinking positive. So what would be the most significant thing? I think it would be to come away being like Oregon has a quarterback and we think that quarterback is really good.
Yeah.
Just because that's been the question all spring of okay, what's Oregon actually have here? And it seems like from everything we've heard, Anthony Brown is kind of stepped up and is that guy, but we want to see it. And we've only seen one scrimmage a couple weeks ago. And I don't know how much you want to take away from that. You can definitely take something, but not everything.
I mean, I thought Butterfield had the better day of the 3 quarterbacks that participated in the scrimmage. You saw more of the practice part because I was at a baseball game. But I walked away thinking Butterfield had maybe the most consistent practice. Ty Thompson had the best throw. And I thought Anthony Brown was probably the safest pick of the 3 guys that played.
Yeah, and you know what I'd actually really like to see from Anthony Brown is some success downfield.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the area where Butterfield and Thompson at least showed that they could do the most, and probably the area we saw the least from Anthony Brown. And maybe it's unfair, but I can't get that image out of my head of, I think it was Devin Williams running down the sideline for
wide open
touchdown. Yeah, in the Fiesta Bowl, and he missed them. And I think there was a pass to maybe Micah Pittman or something as well in that game that was off. So I want to see those sort of completions. I think quarterback is the most significant regardless. And I know whether or not it be Anthony Brown or somebody else. Maybe it is Jay Butterfield or Ty Thompson or Robbie Ashford comes out and has just an awesome game. And that totally changes the dynamic and conversation. I don't think that's totally out of the realm, but I think more than likely it's going to be Anthony Brown showing well. I think what happens at that position is going to be most significant, almost regardless of everybody could be really good and that would be significant. Everybody could be bad and that'd be significant. And maybe 1 or 2 guys stand out and that'd be significant. So for me, it's all quarterback. That's where I'm going to be focusing my attention.
I agree. It so much of the perception of a program, the trajectory, perceived trajectory of a program, what they're on, can be decided upon what you think you have at quarterback. If Anthony Brown comes out on Saturday and just absolutely dominates and has a really good performance, I'll be the one to say it. I'm sure you would be in line with me, and we'll see it from a whole bunch of other people out there that will write about the fact that Oregon looks like a playoff contender. Oregon looks like the clear favorite for the Pac-12 championship for a 3rd straight year. And all of a sudden the hype and the excitement skyrockets. And if Anthony Brown plays lights out 14 or the 15 practices in spring football and then comes out on Saturday and has just a oh-hum type of performance, fair or not, we're in the media and the fan base, we're all going to gravitate towards that, whether it's fair or not.
Yeah.
And there's going to be this perception around the program that maybe the quarterback job isn't won yet. Maybe they aren't solidified there like we maybe hoped they would be at this point. And maybe you have some doubts. Maybe not necessarily that they're not going to win the Pac-12, but maybe you're thinking now like, boy, the playoff discussion we can't have that right now until we see some growth at quarterback, because what we saw in a public setting was not up to snuff. Fair or not.
Yeah. And there are other things we can talk about. And we should note we had a podcast yesterday with a bunch of storylines on it that I think kind of assess some of the other things. But like, I think for both of us, quarterback's the big kind of element to get figured out. And again, if someone's really good or someone's really bad, I think that'll matter quite a bit coming out of this game. All right, next one from @NK_McDonald. What's one lesser known player on O and on D that could surprise Duck football fans this fall? I love these questions when we kind of talk about kind of the under the radar guys. Let's just start with offense. I think there's quite a few guys that kind of jump out here, but I think, and lesser known is kind of like subjective of who's really all that well known, but like I still think the tight end position, there's a possibility that somebody
Spencer Webb.
I was going to say, other than DJ Johnson, has a really good season, and Webb was where my head was going.
Like Webb could be a guy that, not to steal your thunder, but he could go from within the fan base being someone who's viewed as, ton of potential, breakout guy, 19. He had that huge touchdown catch in the opening game against Auburn and Dallas that went viral and all of that. And maybe he explodes and turns into an all-conference caliber player at the tight end spot.
I think the thing with Webb, which is weird, which is why I paused, was lesser known. I feel like he's really well known at this point, but he hasn't really proven it. So like my thought is that he does go out and prove it, because I think that tight end position remains pretty open. And like we'll tie this to the spring game since it's coming up. I'll be very curious to see kind of who's the first team tight end. DJ Johnson didn't take part in the scrimmage that we were at. That left Patrick Herbert and Spencer Webb with the first team. Is that the case in the spring game? What's kind of the pecking order there? And then who steps up? Because I wouldn't be surprised. And it sounds like Matt's in the same boat here, that if Spencer Webb ends up being the guy and ends up having a really strong season, we know he has all the physical attributes as a pass catcher. Now it's about putting the rest of it together. Somebody else on offense for you, Matt?
What about Chris Hudson at receiver? Yeah. Like so much is made about Pittman and Jalen Redd and Johnny Johnson, and then Devin Williams last year. And now that's the true freshman coming in, and Dante Thornton and Troy Franklin. Whereas I look at Hudson, and he played quite a bit last year as a true freshman, will be another freshman again in 2021. And I mean, he had a huge catch from Jay Butterfield to get the second team offense to the 1 yard line in a 2-minute drill. He had that 97-yard touchdown pass and catch from Butterfield in the second scrimmage. Mm-hmm. Who knows where he plays? Is it inside the slot behind Jalen Redd, or is it on the outside behind like a Micah Pittman or a Johnny Johnson? But Hudson was a highly regarded recruit coming out of high school. And, so much focus is on the veteran guys and then the newcomers. And we're kind of maybe as a fan base, maybe overlooking his significance as a recruit and he was on the team last year. He had some positive moments. So I would also say maybe a Hudson type guy.
It's a good one.
Lineman. Like I want to pick a lineman, but it's tough to do that.
Well, they're all really well known, and they're not going to surprise people because they're not going to hear their names called unless it's with like an holding penalty or something. People just don't pay attention to that unless it's like a Penei Sewell, and there's no Penei Sewell under the radar guy on this year's team. I like Hudson as a pick too, somebody who the staff was really high on last year, who just didn't really get his quote unquote big moment. I think there's going to be an opportunity for that. Defensively, maybe it's just because it's been the hot button name the last couple of days, but I keep thinking Triquez Bridges and maybe DJ James, both of those two guys just at corner, because obviously there's going to have to be a fill-in for Diamador. And, for a really long time, it was Thomas Graham and Diamade Lenore at corner. And then Michael Wright entered this, the picture in 2019, and kind of transition was natural. Now it's finding that other guy. And I think between Triquez and DJ and James being the starter, probably one of those guys is going to be somebody that we hear their name a lot this year. Lesser known is sort of, again, like it's kind of, I'm not sure who knows, like who's the most popular, least popular players in the team. At the same time, like I feel like between Triquez and DJ, there's enough kind of mystery around those two that they kind of qualify. And I think those are two players that could be big surprises. And I guess the third one for me would be like someone like a Bennett Williams, maybe, just because I think he's somebody who's really talented, who there should be some opportunity with him this year. But I don't think he's like a household name quite yet.
Defensively, there's two guys on the D line that I'm looking at. Braden Swinson. Um, he was a guy that I thought was really impressive in limited snaps last year as a true freshman. Played in 7 games for Oregon. Had a couple tackles, but I mean, he was playing behind a group that had Austin Folio, Jordan Scott, plus the returners and Brandon Dorless and Popo Amave, and haven't even mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau yet. Keon Ware Hudson, Christian Williams. So playing time was hard for him to get on the field on a consistent basis. But now that 2 of those guys are gone, one of them which plays his position, Braden Swinson could be kind of that guy that could maybe emulate what Brandon Dorless did in 2019, where Dorless was a guy that played in 10 games. You certainly saw the potential. You certainly saw the production. It was just like, hey, this is a guy that he just needs more reps. And then in 2020, he got those reps. And now we're talking about him like, hey, he's a bona fide has to play guy going into 2021, probably a starter.
Yeah.
On NFL radars already. Swinson could be, kind of following that path. Like 2021 could be the 2019 doorless version of that, where in 2022 we're talking about Swinson sliding right in to replace Kayvon Thibodeau type of a deal. And then the other guy I'm looking at is Christian Williams, defensive tackle.
Yeah, that's good.
A guy that's started over Popo Amave. I mean, Popo has played in a ton of games, but hasn't started in his career. And Christian got, I think, the last 2 games of the year, started over Jordan Scott, which was pretty interesting to see that. He's played in 10 games in his 2 years, will be a redshirt freshman again in 2021 with an opportunity to win a job. And it could be his for however long he wants it, for 3 or 4 years. So, I think another guy to look at is Christian Williams along the defensive line.
Yeah, I like both those guys. I think Christian's somebody who's got a ton of upside, and you've kind of started to see the fan base familiarized with him, but the upside there is really big. All right, third one from @Jesse Zimmer. As a as a fan of Oregon football, I can't stand the USC Trojans. I also don't like the national narrative that the Pac-12 needs USC to be great in order to win big. So my question is, what's it going to take for that narrative to go away? Does Oregon or any other school need to win a national championship? 5, 10? #Autzen Audibles. Thank you for responding. You guys are the best. Thanks, Jesse, for the question. I mean, if it takes 10 national championships for the conference to gain respect, like that's pretty out of whack right there. I would think like a couple would totally change the narrative. And honestly, like I think if Oregon makes the college football playoff and can challenge and compete with those teams, and heck, maybe they win a game and play for a championship, that would change the landscape a lot. Because like the reality is right now, we just haven't seen the Pac-12 compete with the big dogs on the big stage very often.
Yeah.
It's not college football playoff related, but like Oregon playing well against Ohio State in like 6 months is huge too. Like you have to be competitive in these big games because, like it or not, I think the narrative right now is Oregon is good enough to beat like teams 8 through 25 and on in like the rankings. Like they're capable of beating those teams. You go out there, you put them against the Auburns, people are like, okay, they can match up there. You put them against the Wisconsins, they can match up there. The Iowa State, I know they lost that game and it wasn't particularly competitive, but they can match up there. It's when they're
You have
faced
to win.
But yeah, but it's when you're faced against the Ohio States and Alabamas and Clemsons that they haven't really proven that they can beat and compete with those teams quite yet. And so I think the Ohio State game is huge for that. In terms of winning a national championship, yeah, that would change the narrative. And I still think while like Oregon, would you agree with this? Oregon's probably like the most recognizable brand in the Pac-12.
Probably from the younger fan base of college football and the recruiting standpoint, from a recruit standpoint. Older fan base, older media, no, it's still USC. But I mean, I certainly think Oregon is like, air quote, the sexier program.
Yeah.
For the recruits and for the younger fan base. Like you go to Georgia, you go to Texas, you go to Seattle and you see Oregon gear being sold in shops. And it's more popular. There's more Oregon stuff than there is USC. USC's their gear is everywhere too, but I think there's more of a prominent showing of Oregon stuff than there is USC. Like USC will always be king from the older fan base in Los Angeles and in the deep area. But Oregon has really made a dent into that. They've gone in really hard and have created a big recognizable brand. I do think Oregon as a standalone program can carry the Pac-12 and be the school that the league is good because Oregon's good. But the fact of the matter is they haven't won these huge marquee preseason games. The Iowa State Fiesta Bowl game did not help. Yes, they beat Wisconsin in that game, but Wisconsin doesn't have the same cachet as Ohio State or Auburn or LSU. And so you need to beat kind of one of these teams that have won a national championship before and kind of in a relevant time period too, to really get, the just, recognition and reputation that, you're talking about.
I look at Oregon, and just back to the original question. There's no doubt that a quote unquote like new blue blood, like a whatever you want to call it. Like I look at Clemson in the ACC. It wasn't long ago that they were kind of a laughing stock and not very good, and now they basically define what the ACC does every year, and that's because they played for and won national championship. So like I think for Oregon or the conference to get there, it doesn't have to be USC, but somebody has to step up. And Oregon feels, I think, pretty clearly like the team to do it right now, just based on recruiting success and winning the conference the last couple of years and what they've done even in non-league play. So, like, I don't think it's unrealistic that can happen. What's the number of national championships? I don't think it's 5. I don't think it's 10. Like, I think competing and just proving yourself to be competitive on the national stage will do it. And I don't think Oregon's that far off, but they really need to take advantage of their opportunities the next handful of years, because they do have some big signature games.
Like, let's say Oregon does, if they play in one of these New Year's Six or the playoffs, in the next 5 years, they make all of them, whether it's a playoff game appearance or they get to the Rose Bowl when the Rose Bowl is not in rotation for the college football playoff, or the Fiesta Bowl when the Rose Bowl is in rotation for the playoff. Mm-hmm. And let's say they, so that would be like 7 straight years where they've now made, one of these major bowls or college football playoffs. And if they win like 3 of those or 4 of those over the 7-year period, then yeah, we're going to get what you're asking. Like every year is going to go in and say Oregon's a top 5 team, top 10 team. And every year, regardless of who they have, who they lost, they are a college football playoff contender and they carry the league. Like, that's one way to go about doing it. The other one is the easiest and quickest path is to get there and win it.
Yeah, maybe not the easiest, but that's the one. That's how you change the narrative for sure. Or if Oregon wins a national championship, everything changes.
Yeah.
All right. Next question from @PuddlesDog. I love this question. If you could turn one Oregon coach back into their former player selves, which coach would you want playing for the Ducks right now and why? #Autzen Audibles. Thanks for using the hashtag. A lot of people did use the hashtag today, which is great. I
think this is an obvious answer.
I think Joe Salavea would be the person that I would want playing football for Oregon, because I think
he suited up in a Duck uniform like last year and looked the part.
I was going to say, I feel like you put him out there right now, he might be your starting nose tackle. Like
he is. I mean, how many times has Cristobal joked about like having to suit up Joe Salavea because he is huge and athletic and just looks the part. I mean, and you played in the NFL.
Yeah, it's an NFL player. I was trying to think of who else even has that caliber, and like I don't think it's that close. Like, who is even the next? Is Mario Cristobal the next guy? Like, is that the next person you think of? I mean, that's somebody who at least won national championships in college, played offensive line. I'm running through the list here going like, it's not like Oregon has one of its all-time great position players on the roster, like as a coach.
It might be Mario, but I think the obvious one is Joe Salavea. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to find this somehow and share it on social media, but there's literally a video or a photo of him. He fully suited up for a photo shoot, I think, with a recruit that he was recruiting that was on campus at the time. So it would have been pre-COVID, so 2019 time period. And he looked like straight up like a regular player.
Not regular because he's like 400 pounds, but like he fit the mold.
He looked the part.
Looked the part. All right. I love that question. I thought that was fun, but I think we both had a pretty obvious answer. I don't know. Like maybe Mario's probably the second pick. I'm racking my brain thinking like I don't know what like Brian McClendon or Rod Chance's or Ken Wilson's playing careers looked like, but I don't think they really compare much to what Jose Lavea did from a professional perspective. So there's another one. Fifth one from @Duck4Quacks. As we continue to get more and more wildfires, what do you think are the chances the university is considering adding a dome to Autzen to keep games from being canceled? Hashtag Autzen Audibles. Hashtag it would never rain in Autzen Stadium. I like the second hashtag, and it's true. If you put a dome in there, it really never would rain, and then Don Essig would be like immortalized for the accuracy of the fact it never does rain. And right now, it's kind of tongue in cheek because it does. But
there were plans at one point to build Autzen Stadium with a dome intact, which would be really weird.
I don't know if I like it.
I don't like college football for whatever reason. Like pro football doesn't bother me in a dome, but throw in college football in a dome, and it just doesn't feel like all the way there.
Well, I think part of it is one of the cool parts of college football is you go to Pullman, Washington. You have to be like in the elements, and if you put a dome on all of these places, you take away the element part of it. Like going to Pullman in November is a tougher game than it should be because it's like freezing, 15 degrees, and there's snow on the ground, and it just sucks to be there.
I did that this year, and it was not fun for the 2020 football season.
There you go. Matt knows. So, like, if there was a dome there, it would have felt a little different. I know, obviously not where you were staying, but, like, in terms of being at the game, it would have felt a little different. So, like, yeah, I'm with you. I don't love the idea of a dome. Like, in terms of the wildfire part, I think that's sort of legitimate. Like, I mean, we don't want – this isn't the Weather Channel podcast, Oregon Ducks. This is, like, a football-related podcast. But, like, it hasn't bit Oregon yet, but I do, again, like I think we mentioned this in the past, like the Oregon-Ohio State game obviously didn't get played in 2020, but the wildfires were at their peak level last year. During that time, I mean, we were wearing like gas masks and not leaving our houses. I don't know if that game would have been played. So I do think, especially September into October, there's a possibility this just gets worse and worse, and it does get problematic. So like, there's like legitimate question of like, would it make sense to do it because of the wildfires? And then there's the aesthetic part, and I think we both agree the aesthetic part doesn't make sense. And I don't know what it would take to get to the point where they are actually building a dome. Maybe they want to get ahead of it because they see it happening, but I would imagine you'd have to actually have real games canceled or postponed.
We'd have to see like years upon years stacked together where this really impacts things. Like the data right there right now is not there to justify a dome from a smoke perspective.
I was gonna say, like, I would think if you were like Berkeley or Palo Alto or Los Angeles, like one of those places would put a dome up before Eugene, Oregon,
because of smog. It would be
exactly. It's so much more prevalent down there.
Yeah, it'd be smog, not fires. But nonetheless, that would be an interesting dynamic to see Autzen with a dome, and not sure I would like it.
I don't think I like it. I don't like it off the top of my head, but we'll hopefully we never get there.
Retractable dome?
Maybe. It just sounds fancy. I still don't like it. I just don't like the idea. I'm with you. For some reason, I can't put my finger on it exactly, but I'm with you. Like, I don't like domes in college sports. It just doesn't seem like it fits. It seems like that's the pro stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to distinguish as much as possible. All right. Next one from @WindyTree503. Over under of 2.5 5-star players signing with Oregon football in the 2022 class, even with short numbers / scholarships. Hashtag Autzen Audibles. Matt, that's like 3 5-stars to go over. Obviously, we know how the under works. That's a pretty significant number. Yeah, I was going to say under too. You know some of the names better, but I'm kind of going like Oregon did hit the over on this in 2020, but that took a lot of things falling into place. And even in 21, the best class ever, it's a strong under because from a 247 Sports composite perspective, it's 0. So 3 is a huge number, Matt. Like let's just say hypothetically, like how would they get to 3? Can you even see a path to 3?
Maybe Tanner Bailey, that would be such a huge jump though. He's 205th.
Yeah, I would say he's in the 200s right now. He's like way off.
The country, moving up into 4-star status. I mean, they're probably their most likely outcome to get a 5-star right now is Kevin Coleman or Teratario McMillan, both receivers. Coleman's already a 5-star.
Yeah,
he's high on Oregon. McMillan is a top 60 player and from California, and he's high on Oregon. So maybe one of those guys, committing and moving up into the world and becoming a 5-star. Anai White, a defensive end who's planning on officially visiting Oregon, is 39th in the country. Maybe Oregon can push their way and he has a really good year and that happens. Josh Connerly is a 5-star offensive tackle from Seattle, and Oregon is in there in that mix with him. And Kelvin Banks is another 5-star offensive tackle from Texas that's planning on coming to Oregon for an official visit. So maybe you get one of those two guys, and then maybe a couple of your commits move up. I have a hard time seeing. I could see 2 without a doubt happening, but seeing 3 at this current stage where things are at, that seems like you're hoping for a shooting star to fall your way, no pun intended, to land and things just perfectly go your way. Like that, just like Harold Perkins is coming for an official visit, the 12th best player in the country. Like he's coming for the Oregon State game, outside linebacker from Texas. But like I just get really worried about guys that are Texas or Georgia or Ohio, that are 5-star guys and coming to Oregon.
There's no track record. It's all West Coast guys.
It's very hard. Like it's not happened. I don't think.
No. I don't think anybody.
Every 5-star guy that's signed with Oregon is someone that's come from the region, and so you kind of have to look at, okay, now where are the guys that are in the region that fit this criteria? And if you told me 2, I would say that's probable. That probably is good. If you told me 3, I'm not on board.
I think the only other thing that could give Oregon an outside chance is just the strange, peculiar nature of the last year, and maybe some of the reevaluations and some of these kids changes a lot. And a guy like Bailey, who you mentioned, maybe they'd realize, he skyrockets and they hadn't seen him enough, or somebody else that's already committed, or someone that's a top target. But I'm with you. I think that seems like a pretty high number. Matt, I'm going to toss another question in here because I'm getting real confident, maybe a little too confident that we're running through this quick enough. So here's another question from @March Madness 83. This was not in the show notes, Matt, so get ready for this one. Jefferson's Mookie Cook was recently offered by Arizona and Kansas. Oregon hasn't signed a PIL player under Altman. Moser from Grant doesn't count as he was a transfer. How are the Ducks looking for Cook's recruitment? #Autzen Audibles. For those unfamiliar, this is potentially like the best recruit in the state's history from a basketball perspective. He's going to rival Kevin Love or like Kyle Singler for that sort of distinction. Oregon, the Portland area has had some really good players come through it, but it sounds like Cook might be the best one. Matt, like Oregon's name's not really attached right now. It's really early on. I think he's 23, class of 23. So there's some time here. What do you think? Is we're going to factor into this, or is this just one of those things where a kid is going to end up probably playing on a blue blood or even going pro, because that's a possibility too?
Yeah, that's the last one there. That's like my biggest fear is Mookie Cook out of Jefferson, 6'6" wing, 14th best player in the country, 4th best small forward in the country, 9.955 composite score. He's going to have the potential to go to the NBA. Like that is going to be a possibility.
And then, by the way, the NBA might be changing its entry rules by that point. So that might be a possibility. He's like one of the first guys to do it.
Right. He would, as of today, his ranking today on the 27th of April of 2021, if he were to commit to Oregon, he would be the 3rd highest guy ever to commit to the Ducks. Bol being 1, Malik Harrison being 2. He would just edge out Troy Brown by like 1/100,000th of a point. But Oregon's in there. Like they are going to be a major player. They will be one of the finalists. I would be shocked if they're not. The issue is they're going to have to reestablish. They don't have to reestablish, but his best contact, his best relationship forged with Oregon staff was with Tony Stubblefield. And Stubbs is now at DePaul. So they're going to have to, kind of not reestablish, but just, bring in the new face to, and things will be good again. But, Oregon's here. They're the player. Arizona and Kansas offering are big, but don't sleep on the G League Ignite, or like you said, the NBA by this time, when he has to make a decision, they might have changed their requirements to go to the NBA. And if that happens, then all bets are off, really. Like, because I wouldn't be surprised if when we see that happen, it'll happen at some point in time. That's where things are going, where high school athletes can go pro again, to the NBA. And when that happens, I think for the first couple of years, we're going to see just waves of guys declaring because they think they're there and they won't be. And it'll take some, course correction time to get there. And, Cooks will be a guy that would justifiably so. I think he's worth looking at going pro. But the answer, yeah, Oregon will be a player. Are they the favorite right now? It's too early to say anyone's the favorite. But Oregon has recruited them. They're really interested in him. They like his game. They offered really early on in the process. And now it's just getting him on campus, getting him to Eugene for unofficial visits and being around the program. And the program has to win too. Keep winning and keep elevating themselves. But they'll be there through the thick and thin of it.
All right, we're going to wrap it up with this one from @JohnnyTheK. What does the entrance to the transfer portal of 3 experienced guards say about the state of Oregon women's college basketball? In other words, what the heck is going on?
This shocked us.
Yeah, we're recording this a day after Taylor Mikesell added her name to the transfer portal. She joins Taylor Chavez and Jazz Shelley as 3 perimeter players who've all left since the conclusion of the NCAA tournament a couple weeks ago. Like Matt said, I had anticipated and expected and kind of heard to be prepared for Jazz Shelley and Taylor Chavez taking off. I think that was those that watched the season closely, especially the last couple of months. It was pretty clear those players had kind of fallen on, I don't want to say out of favor because that sounds sort of unfair, but their minutes
they were out of the rotation a little bit.
Yeah, their minutes were kind of falling by the wayside a little bit. They weren't getting as much opportunity, and so hey, both talented players, both opportunities with quite a bit of eligibility. Go find a place to play. Chavez is going back home to the state of Arizona. She's had some family things to deal with. Some of that's been reported online. You can go take a look at that if you're curious. Those made sense, and Shelley's from Australia, and if she's not enjoying her time here, why not go find some other place? Mikesell was really surprising, in part because I believe she might have to sit out the 21-22 season because of the NCAA rules, because she's transferred again in two times in 2 years. So I think she has a chance to put in for a waiver.
Yep.
But it was kind of surprising she made that move with that perspective. And also because I had heard from a couple people I trust shortly after Chavez and Shelley took off that there really wasn't an expectation anyone else would leave. And if they would leave, the name I was told was not the player. It was not Taylor Mikesell, it was somebody else. So this one was really pretty surprising. And I think in the midst of seeing so many coaches leave for good reason. I mean, Mark Campbell offered a head coaching job at Sacramento State, take the job, and Xavi Lopez and his wife wanted to follow him because they're really close friends. And for Lopez, for Xavi, it was a step up in position. He's an associate head coach as opposed to being an assistant coach. All of this makes sense. And they're building a staff. Mignon Moore's on their staff at Sacramento State. So I think that makes sense. And I know Mark Campbell played a pretty sizable role in getting Taylor Mikesell, and Lopez was another person involved. So it makes sense that maybe she's looking around after that. But this puts Oregon in kind of a tough spot here. They need to go refine, they need to go get some coaches, because right now they are basically down to Kelly Graves and Jody Berry, who's been an assistant coach with Graves for a couple of decades. They need to go find a couple assistant coaches. They need to replace the director of basketball operations. That was what Megan Lopez was for a handful of years, along with her husband. So there's some jobs to fill. And then I think they do need to add a transfer. That was not, and I have a podcast with Kelly Graves that was up about a week ago. And he was like, I feel good with 5 guards. As long as we got 5 guards, we're good. Now they have 4 guards, and they're going to go try to find another one. And again, the first step is finding the assistant coaches to go do this. The next step is going and finding another guard that can play and help right away. What the heck is going on? 3 transfers isn't exactly a crazy number, especially given the year Oregon had and the roster numbers that they had prior. But I do think the fact that this was somebody who pretty clearly they expected to be around and they're not around that's sort of significant. And I don't think there's like a cultural issue in place, but you don't love when you see some pretty high caliber players like Mike still started almost every game this last season, and the other two started a lot too, decide to leave after a season. It sort of leaves a weird taste in your mouth. And I'm expecting that Oregon will be really good in 21-22. I want to make that clear. I think they've got a really talented roster, but now they have to go find at least one more perimeter player who can score, and maybe not even have to be a starter. And maybe this opens it up for Maddie Shear to really take it over and to be, to fill in there. And that's not a bad thing, big picture maybe. But I can't help but think this is not exactly the intended outcome of this offseason, as Oregon is now down 3 guards, and they're going to have to find somebody. And that's a place that I don't think they thought they were in a couple of weeks ago.
So like what type of a guard? This is where I get stuck with transfer and like, do you want to go out and find like a Mignon Moore, someone that you just instantly know they're starting, like they are so good that they have to start? Or is it better to roll with, okay, let's just say that, Maddie Shear, Sydney Parrish, and Te-Hina Paopao will be your starting guards for the upcoming season, paired with Nira Sabally and Sedona Prince. And now the idea is, let's go find maybe a younger player who, still is in development, or go find a grad transfer who just, I'm okay being the 6th man and I want to make the tournament type of a deal. Like, that's where I get really conflicted about what they should do. Is like, do you look at Paopao? I think Paopao is bona fide star. Like, she's your point guard for the next 3 years, or as long as she's at Oregon.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then Maddie Shear and Sydney Parrish, do you look at those two and say, like, those are the guards that we're going to roll with, and they're good enough to get us to a Pac-12 championship and back to the Final Four? Like, or do you say you need to upgrade?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell with those two just because the minutes haven't been there. And to say that I feel that they're like Final Four ready with those two being the primary off guards is kind of a big leap, because you can say what you want to say about Mike. So I don't think she had a great single season in Eugene. She was really streaky as a shooter, wasn't great defensively, turned it over quite a bit. So like, I'm not saying that you're going to be downgrading a significant amount, but in terms of getting to that next level, I do think you have to find at least another player capable of challenging those two. Because I as good as Maddie Shear was at the end of the season, and I'm like in the camp of saying I thought she was great, especially against Georgia defensively, in terms of distributing the basketball, but she couldn't score the ball. And I think I now look at this team and go, they really need to find a shooter, and they need to find some more perimeter scoring. Say what you want about everybody that's outgoing, because I think there were certainly flaws for all 3 players, but at least that those players could kind of go get you a bucket. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of looking at this group right now thinking there's not a lot of players I look at that say I can go get a bucket. Like Taylor Bigby and Maddie Shear are probably better defensively than offensively, and Te-Hina Paopao and Sydney Parrish and Angela Dugalich are probably better offensively. But like, I haven't seen enough from those 3 to really feel like great about their ability to just go get a basket. So like, I think that the thing you want to find in this is someone who can score a basket, someone who can go get you a basket, someone who can spread the court from 3-point range. I know like those 3 players that are leaving were supposed to be your dead eyes along with Aaron Boley this last season. Those were supposed to be your 3-point shooters, and it didn't turn out that way because basically all of them had up and down or to below average shooting seasons. But I think you got to go find a shooter, and you got to find somebody who can kind of handle the basketball and be another primary ball handler, because Mike still had faults, but she could at least do that for you. So I expect them to be pretty active here in the transfer portal. I don't think there's really any prep prospects to look at. Maybe they'll find another JUCO. That's not impossible, but I would imagine this is going to be a grad transfer that can play right away, that can fill in. And I don't know if she's a starter, but she's at least somebody who can contribute and be a part of this rotation. I also say, like, hey, maybe it's not terrible that you're going to roll with Paopao, Shear, and Parrish for the long term, and go, hey, this is year 1 of what's going to be 3 years of these 3 guards working together in the backcourt. And by the senior year, the continuity is fantastic, and you keep adding around them, and they're really good. So like, there's that part of it too. I don't think the sky necessarily has to be falling. Taylor Mikesell's not Sabrina Ionescu. Like, she's a very good college basketball player, a really good shooter, but like, I don't think it's impossible to think Oregon can't get somewhat better by just adding another piece that fits a little differently with this group.
I also wonder if Mikesell's transfer is in part because maybe Kelly Graves had a team meeting and said, hey, look, we're shifting our offense from, fast pace, freewheeling and dealing, 3-point shooting, like we've seen under Sabrina and the last couple of seasons, to more of a high-low, half court type of a game with their two best players, Saubley and Prince. Like two players that are 6'5" or taller. Prince is 6'7", and you're gonna have a clear advantage from a height perspective. And those players are really good. And maybe it's, hey, like we're gonna change our playing style a little bit to fit the roster that we have currently constructed. And Mike Sell looked at it as like, hey, I was coming here thinking, we were going to be up and down super fast. And this is me totally spitballing, but
speculation.
Not what I was, anticipated playing. And I don't want to be, stuck in a corner to hit threes when the ball gets kicked out. And, I want an up and down game, and it just doesn't fit her anymore. Maybe that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, it's speculation. Unfortunately, the unfortunate part of that is, Matt, like I actually think she's better off just sitting in the corner catching open three than she is something else. So like, I hope she's not miscasting herself thinking something differently. But I don't know. Like, there's certainly a possibility that she kind of took a look and thought, this isn't quite what I thought I was getting into when I came out here last year. And let me go. I've got more time and eligibility. Let's go find another spot. And no ties to the region as well, originally from Ohio. So it's not like she's from our Eugene's backyard and it's somebody that has ties here. It makes sense for her to be one and done if she wants to be one and done at Oregon.
It's going to be interesting to see play out, see what they go after, who they target. Because like you said, I'm in agreement. They need a guard now. The depth requires it, because if an injury happens, now you're in a really tough spot. And you don't want to go into a year where if an injury happens, you don't have a replacement sitting there.
Yeah.
It might be a case where, hey, they're not ready, but we at least have someone waiting in the wings for one injury. But if, now, if they get hit with one injury, they don't have enough.
And they just saw last year what happens with Pau going down. It's not good. So exactly. They need some depth, no question.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And thank you for everyone sending in your questions for the mailbag. If you're listening on the podcast, hey, give us a review, hit that subscribe button. It's free. And if you're watching on YouTube, also thank you. Thank you for checking us out. Also hit that subscribe button, give us the like button. We're going to continue doing more and more of these, and they'll see more and more of this. And we're working on an official channel as well. So that is in the works. It's going to take some time to get that all set up and good to go. But until then, you've been listening to the Autzen Audibles podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.